Good night, guys. Tonight we pull back the velvet curtain on a part of history rarely discussed in polite company. We're venturing deep into the sun-baked sands of ancient Egypt, straight into the hidden perfumed chambers of the pharaohs to uncover the strangest sexual practices of these god-kings. Imagine the whispers, the flickering oil lamps, the heavy scents of lotus and myrrh, all setting the scene for unions both sacred and utterly bizarre. You're about to witness practices that might make even your most daring dating app adventures look like a trip to the library. Frankly, you probably won't survive this journey into the deepest, darkest secrets of the Nile's rulers without a few raised eyebrows, if not a complete jaw drop. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're at it, why not drop your location and local time in the comments? It's always fun to see where you're all listening from. Now, dim the lights and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You find yourself standing at the precipice of ancient Egyptian royalty, a world where the lines between the divine and the decidedly carnal were not just blurred, but often completely erased. In this land of pyramids and papyrus, the pharaoh wasn't just a king. He was a living god, a direct descendant of Ra, Horus, and all the rest of the celestial crew. This divine status wasn't just for show. It seeped into every aspect of his existence, especially his private life. You see, the pharaoh's bedroom was not merely a place for rest or procreation. It was a sacred space, a microcosm of the cosmos, where his actions, even the most intimate, held profound implications for the entire kingdom. His fertility was directly tied to the fertility of the Nile, the prosperity of the harvests, and the very stability of Egypt itself. Talk about performance anxiety, right? Imagine the pressure of knowing your personal prowess dictated the nation's wheat supply. Scholars continue to debate whether some of the more outlandish practices were literal acts or purely symbolic rituals, but what's undeniable is the deep connection between royal sexuality and cosmic order. It's widely acknowledged that the pharaoh's divine right to rule was often reinforced through complex genealogies and surprisingly through practices that we might find a bit unconventional today. The royal family was believed to be separate and superior, their bloodline pure and sacred. This belief system led to some truly eyebrow-raising customs, which we'll dive into deeper in the next section. But for now, just picture the ancient Egyptian court bustling with servants, priests, and officials, all aware that at the heart of their world lay the pharaoh, whose very essence, including his sexuality, was intertwined with the fate of their civilization. It wasn't just about heirs. It was about ensuring the sun rose, the Nile flooded, and the cosmos hummed along nicely. A fascinating tidbit. Some pharaohs were even depicted with an erect penis in certain artistic contexts, not as a sign of vulgarity, but as a symbol of their life-giving regenerative power, a visual affirmation of their ability to bring prosperity to the land. It's a far cry from modern political campaigns, isn't it? No wonder they built such massive tombs. They probably needed a good long rest after all that divine pressure. Having ventured into the initial chambers of the pharaoh's private world, you now confront the rather startling reality of divine incest and royal bloodlines. This wasn't merely a scandalous rumor whispered behind closed doors. It was a deeply ingrained sacred practice fundamental to the ancient Egyptian concept of kingship. You see, the pharaoh was believed to be a living god, a manifestation of Horus on earth, and maintaining the absolute purity of this divine essence was paramount. The most direct, most sacred way to achieve this in their understanding was through marriage within the immediate royal family. We are talking about unions between siblings, sometimes half-siblings, and in certain debated instances, even father-daughter pairings, all designed to safeguard what they considered an untainted lineage. It sounds utterly bizarre to our modern ears, like something ripped from a particularly intense family drama, but for them it was a solemn, inescapable duty. The underlying rationale, as alien as it might seem, was remarkably consistent within their cosmology. Divine blood, they believed, simply could not be diluted. If the pharaoh embodied a god, then the woman who would bear his heir, the next god, king, had to share that same unblemished divinity. And who better to ensure this sacred purity than a sister or a daughter? Individuals sharing the most direct genetic link. This practice wasn't just a political maneuver. It mirrored the mythical unions of their most revered deities like Osiris and Isis, who were both brother and sister and yet conceived Horus, the very archetype of Egyptian kingship. So when you envision a royal wedding in ancient Egypt, banish any thoughts of typical societal norms. Instead, picture a union meticulously orchestrated to uphold cosmic balance, secure the succession, and maintain an unbroken chain of divine power. It was less about personal romantic connection, although affection certainly blossomed in many royal marriages, and profoundly more about the perpetuation of divine authority. Numerous historical records confirm the widespread nature of brother-sister marriages among pharaohs across various dynasties. For instance, Ramses II, one of Egypt's most famous rulers, married his sister, Nefertari, who rose to become one of the most celebrated and influential queens in Egyptian history. Similarly, Akhenaten, the revolutionary pharaoh, married Nefertiti. And while their exact familial relationship is still a subject of scholarly debate, some suggest a cousin, others a full sister. The pattern of close kin marriage remains evident. These were not isolated incidents. They represented a consistent royal policy for maintaining the perceived purity and legitimacy of the ruling line. It was an incredibly exclusive dating pool where your options were quite literally your immediate family. Imagine trying to explain that concept at a modern family reunion. Yes. Well, it's for the good of the nation, darling. And the wheat harvest, of course. A particularly interesting detail about these relationships is the specific terminology the Egyptians employed. They often used titles like Great Royal Wife Hemp-Neset, which almost exclusively referred to women from the immediate royal family. This careful naming distinguished them from other consorts and highlighted their unique sacred status. What adds another layer of complexity is the occasional distinction between biological sisters and spiritual sisters, or those who were adopted into the royal family to fulfill specific roles. This nuance can make tracing these intricate family trees incredibly challenging for modern Egyptologists, like trying to untangle a particularly ancient and very knotty ball of divine yarn. Scholars continue to analyze whether all these unions were consummated in a physical sense, or if some were purely ceremonial, designed primarily to legitimize claims to the throne without necessarily involving intimate relations. Some researchers propose that in cases such as father-daughter unions, the marriage might have been largely symbolic, performed for specific religious rites rather than as a literal conjugal partnership. Nevertheless, the underlying purpose remained clear: to solidify the pharaoh's divine power and ensure cosmic order. It makes you ponder what exactly the wedding vows would have entailed. Perhaps less for richer, for poorer, and more. I, Pharaoh, take thee, my sister, to be my divine partner in ensuring the Nile floods on time, and the sun remembers to rise each morning. A job description with unparalleled pressure. Wouldn't you agree? Having navigated the rather incestuous waters of royal bloodlines, you now drift deeper into the pharaoh's palace, where the grand harem life, power, and pleasure truly comes into focus. Forget any simplistic notions of a gilded cage filled solely with compliant beauties. The pharaoh's harem was a complex ecosystem, a miniature society teeming with political intrigue, economic significance, and yes, intimate relationships. This wasn't just a place for the pharaoh to unwind after a long day of divine duties. It was a crucial administrative and social hub, a veritable corporate headquarters of domesticity, albeit one with significantly more perfumed oils and elaborate hairstyles. You see, the harem, often referred to as the person or house of netting, was a vast establishment. It wasn't always located within the main royal palace itself. Sometimes pharaohs built separate sprawling complexes specifically to house their wives, secondary wives, concubines, children, and the myriad of servants required to keep such an operation running smoothly. Imagine a self-contained village dedicated to supporting the pharaoh's intimate life and securing the succession. It had its own staff, administrators, storerooms, and even workshops where goods for the court were produced. This grand scale illustrates that the harem was far more than a recreational space. It was an economic engine and a training ground for future queens and princes. One fascinating historical insight revealing the sheer scale and importance of the harem comes from detailed administrative records, especially from the New Kingdom. These documents meticulously list the provisions sent to the harems, the number of women residing there, and even the extensive staff required to manage them. For instance, during the reign of Amenhotep III, his Malkarta palace complex had expansive areas dedicated to housing his numerous wives and concubines, suggesting a highly organized system rather than a chaotic free-for-all. It's almost like running a very high-stakes, incredibly personal boarding school, isn't it? Except the students were royal consorts and the headmaster was the pharaoh who would occasionally drop by for conjugal visits. Within these bustling walls, the social dynamics were incredibly intricate. While the great royal wife held the preeminent position, often acting as a key political and religious figure alongside the pharaoh, other principal wives and secondary wives also held significant status, particularly if they bore sons. These women were rarely just decorative figures. Many were highly educated, skilled in arts, music, and diplomacy. They could influence court decisions, engage in significant economic ventures, and on occasion even plot for power. A truly memorable example, a quirky tidbit from the annals of Egyptian history is the famous Haram conspiracy against Ramses III. In this dramatic plot, a secondary wife named Tyr attempted to place her son Pentawere on the throne by assassinating the pharaoh. The conspiracy involved not only women of the harem, but also high-ranking officials and servants, vividly demonstrating the very real political power that simmered beneath the seemingly serene surface of royal domesticity. It certainly puts a whole new spin on family drama, doesn't it? Suddenly, your last Thanksgiving argument seems rather quaint. The precise interpretation of the term harem itself continues to be a point of scholarly discussion. Many experts suggest it carries too many Western Orientalist connotations of mere sexual servitude and prefer terms like royal household or women's quarters to better emphasize the broader administrative and social functions beyond just intimacy. These women, especially those of higher rank, often possessed their own estates, personal servants, and frequently wielded considerable influence through their children, thereby affecting the future of Egypt. You're not just looking at a collection of concubines here. You're observing a complex living web of alliances, rivalries, and aspirations, all intricately centered around the pharaoh's favor and the ultimate crucial goal of producing a legitimate heir. It was a pressure cooker of ambition, where a quietly spoken word at the opportune moment could genuinely alter the course of history, and a single misstep could lead to utter ruin. Imagine the intense social climbing, the subtle jostling for position, the endless unspoken competition to catch the eye of the man who held divine sway over their lives. It makes modern corporate ladder climbing look like a gentle stroll in the park. Leaving the complex social hierarchy of the harem behind, you now turn your gaze to the vast, often unseen network of concubines and servants who inhabited the pharaoh's world. While the great royal wife and other principal consorts held significant power and status, the sheer number of women who populated the royal household meant that many others played crucial roles, often without the same level of recognition or privilege. These were the women who kept the domestic machinery of the palace running, provided companionship, and sometimes, perhaps unexpectedly, found themselves at the heart of royal intrigues. You see, the term concubine in ancient Egypt didn't always carry the same negative connotations it might in some other historical contexts. While certainly not holding the legal or social standing of a primary wife, these women could still be highly valued. Many were daughters of high-ranking Egyptian officials or even foreign princesses sent as diplomatic gifts, forming crucial alliances between Egypt and other nations. Their status varied greatly from those who might share the pharaoh's bed for a night to others who became long-term companions, bore royal children, and even gained significant influence within the court. This was no monolithic group. It was a spectrum of relationships, often fluid and dependent on the pharaoh's favor and the political climate. It's a well-established historical fact that women of the harem often held titles related to administration or religious service, showcasing roles beyond mere domesticity. For instance, some concubines are documented as having served as priestesses in various cults, particularly those associated with fertility goddesses like Hathor. This indicates that their lives weren't solely defined by their relationship with the pharaoh. They had active roles within the larger societal and religious framework of the palace. Imagine being tasked with managing the royal linen one day, then performing a sacred rite for fertility the next, all while hoping to catch the pharaoh's eye. It was a multifaceted job description, to say the least. Beyond concubines, the palace was teeming with female servants, from chambermaids and wet nurses to musicians, dancers, and hairdressers. These women, while lower in social standing, were indispensable to the daily functioning of the royal household. They dressed the queens, prepared the food, entertained at banquets, and cared for the royal children. Their lives were intimately connected to the pharaoh's family, giving them unique insights into the private lives of the most powerful people in Egypt. A fascinating tidbit for those who love uncovering everyday life is the discovery of ostrich pottery shards used for writing from workers' villages near royal tombs. These fragments sometimes depict scenes of daily life, including women performing various domestic and service roles within larger households, offering tantalizing glimpses into the lives of the invisible women who supported the royal elite. Scholars continue to discuss whether the term concubine truly captures the nuanced relationships that existed or if it's an oversimplification influenced by later cultures. Some suggest that many relationships were more akin to secondary marriages, especially when children were involved and acknowledged. The key distinction often lay in the mother's social status and whether her children were considered eligible for the throne. Regardless of terminology, these women often faced significant challenges. Their economic dependence on the pharaoh was absolute, and their social standing, while potentially elevated by royal favor, was inherently precarious. Remember that historical information you have about male concubines in ancient Greece facing social stigma and limited legal rights. While female concubines in ancient Egypt seem to have more varied statuses, they certainly lacked the protections afforded to primary wives. Their future was often tied to the fortunes of their children or the whims of the reigning monarch. It was a life that offered potential luxury but little true security, a constant dance on the edge of the royal spotlight. Think of it as a historical reality show where the stakes were literally life and death and your confessional moments were potentially carved into tomb walls. From the intricate social webs of concubines and servants, our journey now plunges into the profound spiritual depths of ancient Egyptian royalty, ritual sex, and fertility cults. For the pharaohs, intimacy was often far more than personal pleasure or even the practical necessity of producing heirs. It was a sacred act deeply interwoven with the very fabric of their religion and the cosmic order of their world. You're about to explore how the pharaoh's sexuality was seen as a direct conduit for divine power, essential for the prosperity of Egypt itself. Imagine a belief system where the pharaoh was not just a king but a living god, a manifestation of the creator deities. His actions, including those in the bedroom, were believed to have direct repercussions on the natural world. If the pharaoh was virile and fertile, then so too would be the lands of Egypt, the waters of the Nile, and the harvests from the fields. This wasn't merely a quaint metaphor. It was a deeply held conviction that propelled many of their most important rituals. The pharaoh's ability to procreate was a direct reflection of his divine potency and his capability to ensure the welfare of his kingdom. It's like being responsible for the entire country's weather forecast, but with more personal investment. A pervasive historical fact illuminating this connection is the cult of Min, the ancient Egyptian god of fertility, procreation, and sexual potency. Min was often depicted with an erect penis, holding a flail, symbolizing his generative power. Pharaohs were intimately linked with men, sometimes participating in rituals directly involving his cult to reinforce their own fertility and the fertility of the land. During harvest festivals, the pharaoh might perform ceremonies dedicated to men, ritually cutting the first sheath of grain, an act symbolically linking his own virility to the abundance of the crops. It was a tangible, visible connection between the king's body and the nation's bread basket. A truly fascinating, almost bizarre tidbit involves the concept of divine birth. Many pharaohs, particularly during the New Kingdom, propagated the idea that they were not merely born of human parents, but were the result of a divine union between their mother and a god, often Amonra, who took on the form of the reigning pharaoh's father. This sacred marriage was depicted in temple reliefs showing the god embracing the queen, leading to the conception of the pharaoh. While clearly symbolic, these narratives serve to legitimize the pharaoh's rule and emphasize his divine origins, essentially giving him a celestial birth certificate. It's the ultimate "my dad can beat up your dad" argument, except your dad is a cosmic deity. Scholars continue to analyze the extent to which these ritual sex practices were literal or purely symbolic. While the idea of a pharaoh ritually engaging in sexual acts for fertility is sometimes suggested, the evidence is often metaphorical or depicted in highly stylized art rather than explicit texts. However, the overarching theme remains. The pharaoh's personal fertility was intrinsically linked to the national well-being through a complex system of religious beliefs and ceremonial actions. This fusion of the intimate and the divine meant that every aspect of the pharaoh's sexuality held profound significance, ensuring not just a lineage of kings, but the very continuation of the Egyptian world. From the profound spiritual connections of ritual sex, we now venture into a more symbolic yet equally fascinating aspect of royal intimacy: animal symbolism in the royal bedroom. You might wonder what a roaring lion or a slithering cobra has to do with the pharaoh's private life. But in ancient Egypt, the animal kingdom was a rich tapestry of metaphors, and their attributes were frequently invoked to describe and empower the pharaoh, particularly in matters of virility and protection within the royal household. Imagine a culture where every creature held a deeper meaning, where the fierce power of a bull or the watchful gaze of a falcon spoke volumes. These animalistic qualities weren't just observed. They were absorbed into the pharaoh's identity, especially when it came to his generative capabilities and the safeguarding of his family. The bedroom, much like the throne room, became a space infused with these powerful symbolic representations, acting as both a visual affirmation and a magical ward. It is a widely accepted historical understanding that various animals were seen as embodiment of specific deities or abstract concepts. For instance, the bull was a pervasive symbol of strength and virility, directly linked to male potency and the pharaoh's ability to ensure abundance. The pharaoh himself was often referred to by titles like Strong Bull, emphasizing his immense power and procreative vigor. You might see depictions of bulls or their horns in contexts associated with fertility or royal power. It's a bit like calling someone a tiger in the boardroom, but for, well, slightly more intimate settings. No wonder they always look so confident in their statues. A truly captivating, perhaps even quirky tidbit involves the use of amulets and protective symbols in the shape of animals placed within royal residences or even worn by the pharaoh and his consorts. Consider the cobra uraeas on the pharaoh's crown, a fierce protector that would spit fire at his enemies. While primarily a public symbol of divine authority, its protective essence extended to the private sphere, guarding the pharaoh and his family, including during vulnerable moments of intimacy. Another intriguing example is the hippopotamus goddess Taret, depicted with a fearsome hippo head, lioness limbs, and human breasts. She was a benevolent deity of childbirth and fertility, and her image was often found in domestic settings, including within royal quarters, to protect pregnant women and newborn children. Imagine trying to explain to your spouse that you're wearing a hippo amulet to ensure a good night's sleep. The precise role of some animal symbols within the literal royal bedroom still invites scholarly discussion. Were these just general protective and virility symbols, or did they have more direct specific applications related to intimate acts? While explicit texts detailing animal-inspired sexual rituals are rare, the overarching symbolism points to a deep cultural belief in harnessing the power of the animal kingdom to enhance fertility, ensure protection, and legitimize the pharaoh's divine role in procreation. The ancient Egyptians had a knack for weaving the sacred into every thread of their lives, and the most personal spaces were no exception. So, next time you see a statue of a pharaoh, remember that beneath the stoic gaze, there was a man whose very intimate life was believed to embody the strength of a bull and the protective might of a cobra. Stepping away from the animalistic symbolism, you now enter a realm where hope and anxiety converged, amulets and charms for love. In ancient Egypt, where life was fragile and the continuation of the lineage paramount, magic wasn't just for priests or grand rituals. It permeated daily life, particularly when it came to matters of the heart, desire, and fertility. For the pharaoh and his consorts, ensuring conception and fostering affection was often bolstered by an array of magical objects and spoken incantations. Imagine the pressure on a royal couple to produce an heir. Beyond the physical act, there was an intense spiritual and psychological component. If conception seemed delayed or if a pharaoh wished to secure the affection of a particular consort, they wouldn't just rely on nature. They would turn to a fascinating collection of small potent objects and whispered spells, believing these could influence the unseen forces governing love and fertility. This was less about grand dramatic curses and more about intimate personal interventions in the unpredictable currents of human desire. It's a well-documented historical observation that amulets were ubiquitous in ancient Egypt, worn by people of all social strata for protection, luck, and specific magical purposes. Among these, many were explicitly designed for matters of love, sexuality, and especially fertility. Common examples include scarab beetles, symbolizing regeneration and rebirth, which were often worn by women hoping to conceive. There were also amulets in the shape of the tight knot associated with the goddess Isis, believed to offer protection and life-giving power, or small figures of bees. The dwarf deity associated with childbirth, fertility, and pleasure. These weren't just pretty trinkets. They were believed to be active magical conduits, little portable power-ups for your love life. A particularly intriguing, almost whimsical tidbit concerns the love spells inscribed on papyri or ostrich. These weren't just for the royals, but for anyone seeking romantic advantage. Some spells were designed to cause a woman to come after a man, often involving complex rituals, special oils, and the invocation of deities like Hathor, the goddess of love and joy. Others were more specific, aimed at making someone fall madly in love. While we don't have direct evidence of a pharaoh casting a love spell on a specific queen, it's highly probable that such magical practices were consulted within the royal household given the high stakes of royal marriages. Imagine a love triangle playing out with magical charms instead of dramatic confrontations. Oh, he gave her a fertility amulet. I'll counter with a charm for unwavering devotion. The ancient Egyptian version of competitive gift-giving. The effectiveness of these charms, of course, is a matter that continues to spark discussion among scholars. Were they genuinely believed to alter fate, or did they primarily serve as psychological tools, providing comfort and a sense of agency in an often uncontrollable world? Perhaps they function much like a placebo effect, bolstering confidence and alleviating anxiety in the individuals who used them. Regardless, their widespread use speaks volumes about the ancient Egyptian belief in the interconnectedness of the spiritual and the physical and their reliance on magic to navigate the most intimate and vital aspects of life, ensuring not just personal happiness, but the very continuity of the divine pharaonic line. From the intricate world of charms and amulets, you now move into a more practical, albeit often equally strange, aspect of royal life. Medical practices for sexual health. Even for god-kings, the challenges of ensuring potency and fertility were very real. The ancient Egyptians, with their surprisingly advanced medical knowledge, didn't rely solely on magic. They also developed a range of physical remedies, some quite sensible, others less so, to maintain the pharaoh's vital role in procreation. Imagine the immense pressure on the pharaoh to produce healthy heirs. It wasn't just about fathering children. It was about demonstrating his divine vitality and ensuring the stability of the entire kingdom. When issues of sexual performance or fertility arose, the royal physicians, highly skilled and respected figures, would be called upon. Their methods were a fascinating blend of empirical observation, herbal law, and sometimes a touch of what we might call folk medicine. It's a foundational historical fact that ancient Egypt possessed a remarkably sophisticated understanding of medicine as evidenced by numerous medical papyri like the Ibis papyrus and the Kahun papyrus. These texts detail diagnosis, prognosis and treatments for a wide array of ailments including those related to the reproductive system. For example, some sections provide remedies for male impotence, often involving mixtures of honey, various plants, and even animal parts. One documented prescription for improving male potency involved consuming specific types of bread mixed with herbs. While we might question the ingredients today, the intent was clearly to address physiological concerns through what they considered scientific means. A particularly quirky tidbit found in these ancient texts includes prescriptions for increasing a woman's fertility that involved rather unappealing concoctions. One such remedy suggested a paste made from dates, beer, and believe it or not, goose fat to be inserted vaginally. The idea was likely to create a more hospitable environment for conception, though the comfort level of the royal consort during such treatments is left to your imagination. Another example involves fumigating a woman with incense and specific herbs to stimulate fertility. It certainly sounds like a unique spa day, doesn't it? Perhaps not the relaxing kind. The effectiveness of these ancient remedies, much like the magical charms, is something that continues to be a subject of academic inquiry. Were these treatments genuinely effective, perhaps due to undiscovered pharmacological properties of the herbs, or did they primarily offer psychological reassurance? Many scholars believe it was a combination of both. The physicians were keen observers and experimenters, but their understanding of biology was intertwined with their spiritual beliefs. They likely approached sexual health with the same holistic view they applied to other illnesses, considering both the body and the unseen forces that could affect it. So while you might not rush to try a goose fat fertility paste, it reminds us of the desperate and creative measures taken to ensure the pharaoh's ability to fulfill his sacred duty of bringing forth new life into the world. Now consider the ultimate vessel of power in ancient Egypt, the pharaoh's body, a sacred vessel. You might think of a king's body as merely human, but for the ancient Egyptians, the pharaoh's physical form was far more than flesh and blood. It was understood as a living conduit to the divine, a tangible link between the earthly realm and the cosmic order. This meant that every aspect of his being, including his physical health and sexual potency, was intrinsically tied to the stability and well-being of the entire universe. Imagine the weight of such a belief. The pharaoh's body was not his own. It was the sacred dwelling place of Horus, the son of Osiris, the living manifestation of divine authority. His physical vigor was believed to directly influence the fertility of the Nile, the success of the harvests, and the peace of the land. If the pharaoh was strong and fertile, Egypt flourished. If he showed signs of weakness, it could be interpreted as a bad omen, potentially leading to anxiety within the court and among the populace. This belief placed immense spiritual and practical pressure on the pharaoh to maintain an image of perfect unwavering vitality. It's like being the CEO of the cosmos, where your personal fitness report directly impacts the global economy. No pressure, right? It is a core historical principle of ancient Egyptian kingship that the pharaoh was deified in life as well as in death. He was considered a living god, and thus his physical health was a matter of cosmic importance. This belief extended to his procreative capacity, which was seen as a reflection of his divine energy. Tomb art and temple reliefs frequently depict pharaohs in idealized youthful forms, even when they were elderly, emphasizing their eternal vigor and perfect physical state. This idealized imagery reinforced the idea that the pharaoh was perpetually capable of performing his divine duties, including ensuring the continuation of the royal line and the fertility of the land. A particularly intriguing tidbit involves the meticulous care given to the pharaoh's body even after death through mummification. While primarily aimed at ensuring rebirth in the afterlife, the preservation process also emphasized the pharaoh's physical integrity. Some scholars suggest that the careful embalming of the reproductive organs was not just about general preservation, but a subtle nod to the continuation of the pharaoh's generative power even in the spiritual realm. It was as if they wanted to make sure the pharaoh was ready for anything in the afterlife. Imagine the meticulousness, the reverence placed upon preparing a body that was believed to be a vessel for eternal creation. The full extent to which the pharaoh's physical body was literally believed to transmit divine energy and how this influenced daily life and intimate practices continues to be a subject of academic debate. Was it purely symbolic, a theological construct, or did it manifest in specific rituals or expectations for the pharaoh's personal conduct? Many scholars conclude that it was a powerful ideological tool that shaped both royal self-perception and public expectation. The pharaoh's body was a sacred instrument, a living prayer for the prosperity of Egypt, and its very existence was a constant affirmation of divine order and unending life. Shifting from the sacred vessel of the pharaoh's body, your journey now takes you through the very architecture of royal life, exploring the architectural spaces for intimacy. You might imagine grand public halls and towering temples, but the pharaoh's palace also contained carefully designed private chambers and secluded gardens. Spaces specifically crafted not just for rest, but for pleasure, relaxation, and the quiet intimacy that underpinned the continuation of the royal line. Imagine the sprawling complexes that served as royal residences. These were not mere houses. They were miniature cities complete with administrative offices, workshops, living quarters for thousands, and indeed highly exclusive areas reserved for the pharaoh and his immediate family. These private spaces were meticulously planned to offer comfort, beauty, and discretion, providing an essential retreat from the constant public demands of kingship. Here, away from the ceremonial gaze, the pharaoh could truly unwind, and his intimate relationships could unfold in carefully curated environments. It is a well-established historical discovery that archaeological excavations of royal palaces revealed distinct private residential quarters. Sites like Malkola, the palace city of Amenhotep III, and Amenar, Akhenaten's capital, show elaborate private apartments for the royal family separate from the public reception areas. These private wings included bedrooms, bathing facilities, dressing rooms, and often small intimate courtyards or gardens. The presence of such dedicated spaces underscores the importance of privacy and personal comfort for the pharaoh and his consorts, enabling them to conduct their lives, including their intimate moments, away from the prying eyes of the court. A particularly charming, almost romantic tidbit involves the inclusion of pleasure gardens within palace complexes. These weren't just for growing vegetables. They were often beautifully landscaped areas with pools, pergolas, and exotic plants designed for relaxation, strolls, and quiet contemplation. Such gardens would have provided a serene and aesthetically pleasing backdrop for intimate conversations and private moments between the pharaoh and his consorts. Imagine the pharaoh strolling hand in hand with his queen through a moonlit garden. The scent of jasmine heavy in the air, a world away from the political machinations of the court. It paints a more human, tender picture of royal life, doesn't it? Perhaps they even had little garden benches for whispered secrets, much like a modern park. The precise decor and furnishings of these intimate spaces and how they contributed to the atmosphere of desire continue to be explored by contemporary scholars. While solid evidence of specific erotic furnishings is rare, the overall luxury and aesthetic appeal of these private chambers with their vibrant wall paintings, comfortable bedding, and perfumed incense would certainly have created an inviting environment for intimacy. These architectural designs facilitated not just rest but also the crucial function of procreation. So the palaces weren't just symbols of power. They were carefully designed stages for the pharaoh's personal life, ensuring comfort, privacy, and the continuation of the divine lineage within walls built for both grandeur and quiet passion. Moving from the carefully designed intimacy of royal chambers, you now confront the dramatic repercussions that sometimes erupted when those private lives spilled into the public sphere: scandal and succession, sexual intrigue. You might think of Pharaoh as a living god would be immune to petty squabbles or scandalous affairs. But the pursuit of power combined with the complexities of multiple wives and concubines often led to intense personal rivalries that could dramatically alter the line of succession and even threaten the stability of the entire kingdom. Imagine a court teeming with ambitious individuals, each vying for the pharaoh's favor, each hoping their son might be chosen as the next ruler. In a polygamous system, where multiple women could bear the pharaoh's children, the potential for intrigue was constant. A concubine might try to elevate her status, a neglected wife might seek revenge, and the stakes were always incredibly high. Nothing less than the future of Egypt. These were not just whispers in the hallways. They were often meticulously planned conspiracies, sometimes with deadly outcomes. It is a well-documented historical incident that the Haram conspiracy against Ramses III stands as a stark example of how sexual intrigue could escalate into a full-blown threat to the throne. You might recall this from our discussion of her life. A secondary wife of Ramses III plotted to assassinate the pharaoh and place her son Pentawere on the throne. The conspiracy involved a network of co-conspirators including high-ranking officials and women from the harem who used magic and manipulation in their efforts. While the plot ultimately failed, its discovery and the subsequent trials meticulously recorded in the judicial papyrus of Turin reveal the very real dangers posed by personal ambitions within the royal household. It's like a real-life ancient Egyptian Game of Thrones, but with actual historical documents proving the plots. A particularly chilling and somewhat grim tidbit from this very conspiracy involves the fate of Pentera. The papyrus records that he was given the option to take his own life, a form of honorable execution for a royal figure. This detail underscores the severe consequences of engaging in such high-stakes intrigue. It wasn't just about gaining the pharaoh's attention. It was about life and death and the very foundation of the royal dynasty. Imagine the despair of a son caught between his mother's ambition and the wrath of his divine father. The profound impact of these personal dramas on dynastic stability is a subject that continues to be closely examined by scholars. How often did such intrigues occur and how frequently did they succeed in altering the course of succession? While the Ramses III plot is the most comprehensively documented, other fragmented evidence hints at similar power struggles throughout Egyptian history. These incidents remind us that despite the divine aura surrounding the pharaoh, his world was still deeply human, susceptible to passions, jealousies, and the relentless pursuit of power often played out in the most intimate corners of the palace. So, while the pharaoh's bedroom was meant for procreation and pleasure, it could also become a dangerous arena where love, lust, and ambition intertwined with deadly consequences for the future of Egypt. Having explored the dramatic interplay of intrigue and succession, we now turn to a more profound, almost existential aspect of ancient Egyptian belief, the weighing of the heart and sexual sins. You might think of the afterlife as a peaceful reward. But for the ancient Egyptians, entry into the field of reeds, their paradise, depended on a rigorous judgment of one's earthly life, where even one's moral conduct, including certain sexual behaviors, could tip the scales towards eternal bliss or eternal damnation. Imagine standing before a divine tribunal. Your heart placed on a scale against the feather of Mart, the goddess of truth and cosmic order. This was the pivotal moment of judgment, where every action, every thought, every intimate decision of your life was assessed. For the ancient Egyptians, morality was not just about abstract principles. It was about maintaining marked balance and harmony of the universe. Violations of this cosmic order, including certain transgressions in one's personal life, could have dire consequences for the soul's journey. It's a foundational historical truth that the weighing of the heart ceremony was central to the ancient Egyptian concept of the afterlife, depicted vividly in texts like the Book of the Dead. This scene shows the deceased's heart being weighed by Anubis against marked feather. While Thoth records the verdict and Amit, the devourer of the dead, stands ready to consume the souls of the unworthy. While the Book of the Dead presents a long list of negative confessions, declarations of innocence. I have not stolen. I have not killed. Some of these implicitly touched upon sexual morality. For example, declarations like, I have not defiled the wife of a man, or, I have not had sexual relations with a boy, in context where this was considered taboo, clearly indicate that certain sexual acts were indeed considered moral transgressions that could impact one's judgment. A particularly intriguing and sometimes debated tidbit involves the specific nature of what constituted a sexual sin. Unlike some later Abrahamic religions with explicit commandments, ancient Egyptian morality was more pragmatic and focused on maintaining social order and cosmic harmony. Sexual acts that disrupted family structures, violated property rights like adultery with a married person, or were otherwise disorderly could be viewed negatively. However, there wasn't a blanket condemnation of all non-procreative sexual acts. The emphasis was on maintaining balance and preventing chaos both within society and within the cosmic order. It's like their version of a cosmic credit score, where your personal choices contributed to your eternal rating. The precise weight given to sexual transgressions during the heart-weighing process continues to be an area of academic discussion. Were these sins considered as severe as murder or theft? Or were they viewed as lesser infractions? Many scholars emphasize that the judgment was holistic, evaluating the entire life of the deceased against the principles of Mart. The specific declarations in the Book of the Dead concerning sexual fidelity and appropriate conduct highlight that personal relationships and intimate ethics were indeed part of the moral framework by which Egyptians sought to achieve eternal bliss. So even in the most private moments, the ancient Egyptian was acutely aware that their actions carried weight not just for their earthly reputation, but for their very soul's survival and the vast, mysterious journey to the field of reeds. Leaving the solemn judgment of the afterlife, you now step back into our own time, reflecting on modern interpretations and misconceptions. You might find that our understanding of ancient Egyptian sexual practices is heavily influenced by our own cultural biases, leading to both fascinating insights and persistent misunderstandings. What we think we know is often a blend of archaeological evidence, ancient texts, and the filters of modern morality and sensationalism. Imagine trying to decipher the intimate lives of people who lived thousands of years ago, separated by vast cultural, social, and technological divides. It's like trying to understand a dream from fragmented memories. Our interpretations are shaped by what we choose to look for, what we deem important, and what we consider normal or strange. This often leads to a fascination with the more exotic or seemingly scandalous aspects, sometimes at the expense of a more balanced and nuanced view. It is a crucial contemporary understanding that modern scholarship strives to avoid imposing anachronistic moral judgments or categories onto ancient societies. For instance, while we discuss incest in royal marriages, it's vital to remember that the ancient Egyptians viewed these unions as sacred and necessary for divine purity, not as a social taboo in the same way we do today. Similarly, concepts like homosexuality are approached with caution. As the ancient Egyptians didn't have a direct equivalent term or the same social frameworks for identity that we do, our task is to understand their world on its own terms, not through the lens of our 21st century values. A particularly prevalent and often sensationalized misconception is the idea of ancient Egypt as a highly promiscuous or sexually liberated society in a modern sense. While their art could be frank about fertility and their literature included love poetry, this shouldn't be equated with a society where sexual encounters were unregulated or devoid of social norms. The focus on procreation, lineage, and social order was paramount. For example, while temple prostitution might be hinted at, it wasn't a widespread celebrated societal norm. The common perception of overly eroticized Egyptian queens, often fueled by Hollywood portrayals like that of Cleopatra, often overshadows their profound political acumen and strategic brilliance. It's like judging an entire culture based on a single highly dramatized movie scene. Oh, so all Romans were like Russell Crowe in Gladiator? Not quite. The constant tension between sensationalism and academic rigor is an area that continues to engage contemporary scholars. How do we present these intriguing aspects of ancient life without falling into the trap of oversimplification or outright misrepresentation? Many researchers emphasize the need for careful contextualization, explaining the unique belief systems and social structures that underpin seemingly strange practices. The challenge lies in balancing the inherent human fascination with intimacy and the duty to accurately portray a complex ancient civilization. So, as you reflect on the pharaohs' sexual lives, remember that what we perceive as strange was often deeply meaningful and rational within their own worldview, and our interpretations are always a reflection of both their past and our present. As our journey through the intimate lives of the pharaohs draws to a close, we arrive at our final reflection, conclusion, legacy of desire, and divinity. You've traversed through a world where the lines between the sacred and the sensual were not merely blurred but often completely intertwined. The pharaohs' sexual practices, from divine incest to ritualistic fertility rites, from the political gambits of the harem to the intimate expressions in art, reveal a profound and unique understanding of desire, power, and the very essence of life itself. Imagine encapsulating millennia of complex beliefs and practices into a single coherent understanding. What stands out most prominently is the unwavering conviction that the pharaoh as a living god was the vital link between the heavens and the earth. His body was a sacred vessel. His virility a guarantee of the Nile's flood and Egypt's prosperity. This wasn't just abstract theology. It translated into tangible customs, rituals, and expectations that permeated every aspect of royal life, even its most private corners. The act of procreation, therefore, was never just a personal matter. It was a cosmic imperative. It is a profound overarching theme that ancient Egyptian sexuality, particularly royal sexuality, was fundamentally linked to regeneration and the maintenance of cosmic order. Whether through the symbolic union with gods, the necessity of producing heirs, or the hope for continued vitality in the afterlife, every aspect of intimacy revolved around the idea of endless renewal. This perspective differs significantly from many modern or other ancient cultures where sexual practices might be viewed purely for pleasure, social bonding, or moralistic judgment. For the Egyptians, it was about sustaining the very fabric of existence, a continuous act of creation, mirroring the gods themselves. A truly striking and enduring tidbit is how deeply this emphasis on fertility permeated their entire artistic and religious output. From the erect phalanxes of Min and Osiris symbolizing generative power to the protective amulets of bees and to Werit guarding childbirth, the visual and spiritual landscape of Egypt constantly celebrated life-giving force. Even the seemingly mundane like the annual Nile flood became potent metaphors for the pharaoh's own potency and the nation's well-being. It's a culture that truly understood the raw fundamental power of creation, celebrating it openly and unapologetically. The enduring legacy of the pharaoh's intimate world continues to fascinate and challenge us. While some practices like royal incest remain unsettling to modern sensibilities, understanding them within their cultural and religious context provides invaluable insight into a civilization that conceived of its rulers as both divine beings and very human individuals burdened by extraordinary responsibilities. The strangeness we perceive is often a window into a worldview where magic, religion, politics, and personal life were inextricably intertwined. The anxieties and fears surrounding Roman marriage, which focused on a significant turning point in a Roman woman's life filled with both hope and uncertainty, provide an interesting contrast to the ancient Egyptian view where both parents shared the responsibility of raising children and marriages were arranged by both families. Similarly, Mongol women who owned property and sometimes fought in battle offer another point of comparison regarding female agency in ancient societies. So, as we close this exploration, we're left not just with tales of peculiar practices, but with a deeper appreciation for the complex interplay of power, spirituality, and human desire in the land of the Pharaohs. Their intimate lives were as monumental and mysterious as the pyramids they built. Forever a testament to a unique civilization that saw desire as a divine force essential for the perpetuation of both king and cosmos.